Okay, so this is the companion video to the one that I'm trying to explain all this stuff in the field, but it may not actually work to explain it in the field. Sometimes it helps to draw things out. So here's what I have for you. Now, in my little example here, you have where a car has been driving this way down through a field or something like that, over a dirt surface. And what you have here are these soil particles that are relatively loosely compact. Now, what you don't see here, and I'll try to draw this in another color, is that what is supposed to happen in living soil, remember, soil is not just dirt. There's a biotic component. It's not just the abiotic part, of soil aggregates and rocks and sand and clay and those things. There's other things going on there, too. There's a layer of organic matter. And this is leaves and that sort of thing, and dead grass from the previous year, and so on. They're supposed to be right here at the surface. And then our detritivores that are really, really important, our earthworms, are supposed to be making little channels all through this stuff, right? And what they're doing is opening up the soil matrix and making it more like a sponge, okay? Whereas you've seen a sponge that you've washed dishes with. Hopefully you've washed dishes for your family. Anyway, it makes it more like a sponge. It's sort of little holes and channels and tunnels. And ants do this too, and hopefully it's our native ants, not our invasive exotic ants. And all sorts of little grub worms and larval species, or species in a larval stage that create these channels and tunnels under the ground. And if you ever played with an ant farm as a kid, or if you've ever been to a zoo where they had an ant farm, you've seen this underground, this insane matrix. In fact, you may want to stop this video and look up an artist who dug up a huge ant bed and filled it with metal, with hot metal. And it runs all the way down through all the little channels and everything, and you get to see how those ants have opened up the soil matrix and made all these air holes and these channels and giant pores. Now that's really, really important. And why? It's because, and I'm gonna be kind of writing and talking at the same time. So soil organisms and when organic matter decomposes, it leaves an air hole, okay? So when a leaf rots, there's a space where that leaf was. And it may be very, very tiny, but those, after millions and millions of leaves decompose, then it leaves a lot of air holes, this nice, loose, spongy sort of matrix. Soil organisms in decomposing organic matter leave giant pores. I'm trying to think of how to say this in a way that's not going to run me out of room. Well, let's just say what it is. It opens up the soil matrix. Fail. Why is that important? It allows water to infiltrate, okay? And it allows air. A lot of people don't realize that plant roots need air. They are living cells. And so the same way that I have to get oxygen in and carbon dioxide out, they have to do the same thing. And then you're gonna be like, wait, Mr. Rainey, plants create oxygen and they use CO2. Yeah, the photosynthetic parts do. The leaves do. The roots, on the other hand, do not do photosynthesis. That's not why they're not green. Okay, they don't have chlorophyll. They don't do photosynthesis. They need oxygen. So why is that important? Got to get water down in that soil. Water infiltration. And oxygen, or what we'll call gas transfer. Oxygen in, CO2 out. Okay, that's what allows our plants to have roots. And regardless of what the water regime is, regardless if we're talking, a semi-arid region like chaparral biome, for instance, or an incredibly plant-rich area like tropical rainforest, then this is true all over. You can't compact the soil. If you compact the soil, you lose all of this. So everywhere that I've driven this vehicle, the soil particles are compressed. Okay, in these areas here, soil particles get compressed. Why is that a problem? Because our little soil organisms can't get in there. So we've got no soil organisms, or subterranean organisms. Subterranean meaning sub, meaning under, and terra meaning soil, okay? Subterranean organisms, no soil organisms. No water infiltration. No gas transfer, no oxygen. So, pretty much impossible to have roots. And that's what you're gonna see, or that's what you saw in the field video, is where I showed you where I've driven the truck a handful of times trying to get out and film other videos, and other people have driven trucks and things, and you get soil compaction. Now I'm gonna try to show you some other places where many, many trucks and heavy machines have gone through, and hopefully that will be on the other video, the companion video to this one, and you'll see what happens when we drive heavy machinery over it. And here's the other thing, is that, and hopefully you saw this in the other video, so what happens when water hits these compacted areas? They don't infiltrate down into the groundwater, into the rooting area, root zone, or anything like that. That doesn't happen. What happens is it's gonna run off. So what happens here with the water? We've either got runoff, and at very least we're gonna get turbidity, because some of this soil is gonna go with that water, because that water's speeding up. Remember I talked about the erosion video. The speed of water increases, erosion increases, turbidity increases. Okay, so we're gonna have runoff. We could even get flash floods from it if there's enough of this type of compacted surfaces. And all the organic matter that could pile up here and create new soil washes away. Organic matter's lost. Topsoil's lost. Of course, I can't have any plants. So it's pretty hard to repair this. Once it gets like this, these are the things that are going to create new soil, right? If I've got no plants growing there, it's hard to get this buildup of organic matter. Even if organic matter was to build up there, it'd run off anyway. I can't have soil organisms to make these new channels and open up the soil matrix because I've completely compressed it almost into rock. Almost compressed it in flat. No, earthworm can't get through that. It's an earthworm, okay? So they're just absent, it's gone. And so when this happens, when the soil compaction happens, it extremely damages the soil. And it takes years and years and years for it to heal from this type of compaction event, okay? Now, in agriculture, it's gonna look a little bit different. This is gonna be very difficult for me to show you in the field without driving hours out to a farmland somewhere. And then when I tell a farmer I wanna do a video on how he's destroyed his land, they're not usually keen on that. So let me explain what happens. So you think, well, don't farmers plow the land? Indubitably. Yes, they do, okay? But here's what happens, what we call a hard pan. So this is my farmland, graded completely flat, which is its own sort of, I'll address that later. But when I drive these huge agricultural machines over the top of it, this is my tractor here, okay? Now, after years and years and years. Now, when I say years and years, we're not talking about 5 years, 10 years. We're talking about the advent of the tractor in the 40s, okay? So from that to the present, you're looking at 80 years of this of heavy machinery being driven up here. Okay, and that's eventually going to start compacting this soil. So over here I used pink to show soil compacted areas. So I'm going to do the same thing. Now, it compacts. And then the farmer plows it. But they're only going to plow up about 6 or 8 inches of soil, just enough to get the seeds in. Okay? And so what you end up with down here, this gets plowed up all the time. Right here, so. But there's still some compacted soil left on the bottom. And what we get is what we call, in agriculture, a hard pan. This area gets plowed, but there's this area of compressed soil, compacted soil underneath. So I'm going to switch to white because that chalk is just better chalk. So, like I said, in agriculture, we're going to call this a hard pan. And it's like having soil, good soil, sitting on top of a dinner plate. So if you were to put water on that, would it run down and refill the underground aquifers and things like that? No. What would happen to it? If you got soil on a dinner plate and you put it under the sink or in the shower, what would happen? It gets wet, runs off, okay? So this leads to a couple of different things. It's going to lead to a lot of topsoil loss. Remember, that's where all of our nitrogen and phosphorus are. So if you lose that topsoil, what are you left with? You have to fertilize the living bejesus out of it. Okay? So eventually it's going to lead to fertilizer runoff. After the topsoil gets lost, then they have to fertilize it, and then of course the fertilizer is going to run off. Then we're going to end up with all that topsoil in our lakes and rivers, okay? So then we've got turbidity and eutrophication. Now, so well, how do you fix that then? Well, what's really funny what happens, because I've seen this happen, I've talked to farmers that have done this. Well, they go, well, we got to plow deeper. We need bigger machines. And then they hire a D9 bulldozer, which is the size of a house, and then they'll plow down like a foot or 2 foot deep, but with a machine that weighs like 40 tons. And so they've just moved the problem deeper. They didn't solve the problem. They just moved the problem down. Okay, a lot of times you can break soil, which you can go in with a tracked dozer. Now keep this in mind, tracks are better than tires. Tracks are better than tires. Tracks are better than tires. And so if you can put a giant bulldozer on tracks and then plow very, very deeply and then leave it alone, then the soil can actually begin to heal. But that's not what happens. You go right back in with the exact same tractors, start doing it all over again.